Alright, welcome everyone back to another video presentation. Tom here, feeling pretty good about things. I hope things are going well for you. This video will be a bit longer than my other offerings, but there's a lot to manage as I do this painting. It's not my usual fare. I'm painting a scene that I found while I was visiting my daughter in Idaho. I went out one morning early, driving through the farm countryside, and found this man-made waterfall. And it was created by a head gate which was built by the local water company. And as the water fell from around 6 feet above to the ditch below, and then on to farmers' fields, it made a beautiful rippling effect in the water. And that's what inspired me to do this painting. I did do a plein air study, and then I used that along with the photograph in the making of this painting. I guess I kind of was attracted to this scene because of my own agricultural background growing up as a boy in the Bear River Valley of northern Utah. Our farm wasn't much. It was a little gentleman's farm, not very big. But of course I worked for farmers around me. I was a summer farmhand. Watered a lot of crops, harvested a lot of crops, and it was a pretty good life. It was hard work, but it was good. As you can see, I'm starting out with a monochromatic drawing in paint. And I do that for that purpose. I take color out of the picture for these bigger paintings, and it just helps me to concentrate on drawing and value first. And then I can bring in the color later on, and it's much simpler for me. And that's often my modus operandi as I work on larger paintings. Also, the warm monochromatic undertone adds a uniting element for the whole painting. That bit of burnt umber is, in a small but effective way, a way to help create a uniting influence on the whole painting when it's completed. Now, as you can see, the brush isn't my only tool. I also use a few cheap plastic drywall tools that I got from one of the big box stores to help me draw long straight lines when needed. And then, of course, you can see my use of my homemade maul stick, and it helps steady my hand as I work. And then, especially, almost exclusively, during the monochromatic phase of my painting, you'll see me use a rag to lift and wipe out color that's down there to create my lighter lights, and then paint in to create my darker darks. The finding of this scene coincidentally dovetailed in with an assignment that I took on from Phillips Gallery. They represent my work here in Utah, or at least along the Wasatch Front in the Salt Lake area. I'm painting on the theme of our fragile environment. Now, they have a summer group show every year, and lately they've had a theme for their artists to work with. And I've enjoyed having these kinds of assignments to work with, and so far I've been able to dovetail them in with my usual body of work. This is a highly detailed painting, and that's probably the biggest reason for its length. But you'd be surprised at how much video footage I actually cut out for the sake of getting through the making of this painting in a timely fashion. It's never boring to paint, never is. But to watch it, well, I realize that, some proper editing would make it a stronger video. Now, as a kid, when helping out with the watering, There were animals that we had to give water to. We had horses and cows sometimes, but mostly goats. We had chickens, we had pigeons, we had, oh boy, we had draft horses, we had little donkeys and burros, had all kinds of critters on our farm. I did the milking most of the time when I lived at home. My brothers mostly took care of the feeding and the watering of the animals. Now we watered our garden with the hose from the well, and the rest of the property was watered by flood irrigation. Our watering turn came at a different time every year, and so we had to be ready. And our acreage was small, so we had a rather short time, so when the water showed up in the ditch, we had to act fast. A couple of times my dad wasn't home, so my brothers and I had to pitch in ourselves, and it was all hands on deck, as they say. We were clearing debris from the ditch as the water flowed through. As the ditch bottom softened, we sometimes would take advantage of the moment and try to dig out that portion of the ditch a little deeper. It was just a matter of coaxing the water along as it flowed in its course. But then, as a kid, what are you going to do with all that? Well, of course, you'd start making a game out of it. I mean, we were kids. What else would you expect of us? There was a little dam to build. There were some ditches to dig, and we all had our own little made up in the moment small farms to water ourselves. Sadly, though, some of my plastic farm animals that I had as a kid didn't quite make it, as the water overtook them and they drowned. So, as the water would spread out over the pasture and the small orchard, you'd start seeing all these little bubbles bubbling up from the ground, as the whole process would displace the air so that the ground could drink the water in. And what toads and insects and other critters there were, they'd start hopping around looking for a high spot to wait out the temporary flood. And then the birds would fly in a few hours later, looking for what worms they could pick up and fly back to their nests and feed to their young brood. Often in the Bear River Valley, you'd see a rather lengthy operation going on in a field where they were re-leveling the field, creating just enough slope so that when the water flowed down from the ditch, it would flow all the way to the end of the field and water the whole crop of wheat or the corn or alfalfa or whatever crop the farmer may have planted. These days, most folks don't really think much about what a farmer does to grow their crops and how water is so central and even essential to the living of a farmer. We see water used in so many ways that it's almost like white noise to us, whether we're watering our dry lawns or our gardens, going swimming in it, or watching a beautiful fountain go off. We are surrounded by it, but do we really appreciate that it is needful for life? Do we care enough about it to want to preserve it? Now, many enterprises using water would extol to us the virtues of their use of water and how it contributes to the economy and society as a whole. But what uses should we really protect and value in our policies regarding it? I think we can be more, what's the word choice? I guess judicious about that. Now, farming and irrigation practices here in Utah, at least, are at least a millennia old, perhaps even older. You pay a visit to Capitol Reef National Park and its historical community of Fruita, and it shows you that. Not only did the early white settlers in the 1800s irrigate the canyon bottomlands, and they grew mostly fruit orchards, but so did the Fremont people who lived there before them. And as illustrated in this painting, you're watching come together. Water companies throughout the American West have built extensive watering delivery systems so that farmers can have water, and that you and I can just go to our tap and enjoy a simple glass of water. It's quite a luxury when you think of it. Our use of water cannot be taken for granted. Now, I debated on whether or not I should tell this story, and I guess me saying that means I'm going to. So here goes. But here's a story about water and faith. And I'm usually not one to go down this road, but I just can't help but do it in this case. I was a teacher of kids in church on Sunday several years ago, and I remember reading in a lesson a story about a farmer who had faith. Now, when water companies set up watering turns, you get what you get. And this farmer's watering turn came to him on Sunday, which is what he didn't want. But what was he to do? And he really struggled over this, and he thought and wondered how he was going to handle it. He decided that he would go ahead and forego his watering turn on Sunday, in order to keep the Sabbath as he wanted to. So as the summer months, as the spring moved into summer and summer into fall, as the weeks went on, he would mark off the calendars when he had rain and when he didn't. And that's what he was going to have to depend on, was the rain, for his crops to be watered. And more than once he sat there on Sunday looking at his irrigation boots and his shovel by the corner of the back door and wondered if he should finally give in. I don't think anyone would have faulted him if he had done so, but he held off. He held off. So he went throughout the summer, no watering of his farm, because his watering turn fell on Sunday. Well, long story short, by the end of the season, he had crops to harvest. And the reason why is because there was enough rain that did come. It was a dry year. We do have dry years here in the West. And I think this story happened, I think it was somewhere in the late 1800s, early 1900s, I think, when water companies were just developing their irrigation systems. And he chose to keep faith with his observance of the Sabbath. He didn't water his crops, but there was enough rain that came that he was able to get a harvest come harvest season, and he wasn't left out in the cold. For what that's worth.
Like a bird on a tree, I'm just sitting here. I got time, it's clear to see. From up here, the world seems small. We can sit together. It's so beautiful, you and me. meant to be in the great outdoors, forever free. Sometimes you need to go and take a step back to see the truth around you. From a distance you can tell. You and me were meant to be in the great outdoors, forever free. You and me meant to be in the great outdoors, forever free.
Well, okay. Still a lot to go through with this painting, and there's still a lot to lay down and just work out in terms of textures and I'm really fighting the word detail. But yeah, I don't consider this actually to have a lot of detail, and when you take a look at how I paint each segment of this painting, I'm using just as brief of an expression of the form as I can with the brush marks that I make. I'm trying not to noodle anything. I'm just trying to lay it in there, leave it alone, let it be the abstract symbol that it is, standing for, well, for example, those light catching ends of the grass and things of that nature. So at this point of the painting, what I was doing is I was actually taking a lot of breaks, and I was getting away from the painting for a little while and then coming back to it. And one has to set up for themselves a kind of rhythm in their approach to a very demanding piece such as this. Timing and keeping your energy level up for it, and just kind of soldiering on through to the end. And so as you can see, I'm beginning finally on that right bank of the gravel rocks that made up the right bank of that ditch. And I put in just kind of a scumbled base of beige over the top of the burnt umber undertone, and those two are beginning to combine to create the kinds of visual textures that'll tell the story of that ditch bank off to the right. I'm putting in these purplish tones here now because they are shadows. They are cast shadows from the grass and the weeds that are growing that I will eventually paint in there. So as I'm going along, I'm thinking in terms of a system. I'm thinking in terms of steps. Start with this, go to that, go to the next, go to the next. So there's a kind of orchestration that is happening as I'm going through this. And here I'm putting in shadowed sides of rocks, and then over the top I will place the color of the rock itself. But I hope you're recognizing that the way I'm laying that in there is very loose, kind of one stroke, two strokes maybe at best, trying to keep it simple. So I think of what one of my professors at the University of Utah once said. He said, "One day I think I will not see as well when I get old, and it shall be a relief." So, for the visual artist, we see so much, but the question is, what do you leave in? What do you take out? What are you looking to accomplish with the piece itself? I find that I really love drawing. I really love the act of trying to make a likeness of something, or at least something that stands as a good symbol for it. So as I'm painting these rocks on the side of this ditch, that's the game I'm playing with myself. How representational can I make these and yet still have them not be too noodled? And it's kind of a balancing act. That's what it is, a balancing act. Now, as I was working earlier on the water, I hope you could see that as I was painting the patterns and not necessarily trying to paint exactly what was there. And that is also true with the grasses that I'm now drawing in with the palette knife. As you can see, I'm not really trying to draw individual grasses. I'm trying to draw groups and clumps. I'm trying to get a feel for the texture and the volume and the mass and the color of what is there in those weedy grasses. But the last thing I want to do is paint in each individual blade. And right there with the brush, I'm laying in just seed heads of those grasses, getting them laid in so that it looks, well, at least representational. You know, sometimes people look at my paintings and say they look like they could be a photograph, and boy, I hope not. No, I don't want to do photos. I don't need to do photorealism. What I want to do is simple painting in an abstract way, things that I see from reality in real life. I love that kind of edge that exists between abstraction and representation. And as you look close there to the ditch bank on the right, you can see how loose some of those rocks are painted. They're just hinted at and suggested, and that's really all that I wanted to do. The palette knife allows me to lay in good strong strokes without painting detail at all, and it's a kind of different mark. I think you've heard me say that before as you listen to other videos. I love the kind of texture that it imparts. I love the lack of detail that it won't give you, and it's just a wonderful tool to work with. So as you consider what you're going to work with, consider your tools and how they can serve you. In the past, you've seen me, or at least in this video, you've seen me use that maul stick a great deal. I've used brushes a great deal, but then you've also seen me use a rag to wipe out with at times as it was appropriate. So whatever tool you need to accomplish what you wish to do that. As you can see, I'm putting in leaves of a weed there. There's nothing at all detailed about that, but it serves my purpose, and it feels really good. Now we're really starting to come down to the final end. You won't see all of the final strokes or the signature, but you will certainly see the final painting. One takeaway that I hope you have from this is that it takes patience, it takes organization, it takes pacing yourself to go through a subject as detailed as the one that I've tried to demonstrate for you here. All the principles of art, every one of them apply. And that's just being applied to a different subject. That is all. So nothing new under the sun here, as it were. Just continuing on with those grass strokes. And we are soon to come up on some details to show you here. And here we have details to show of the brushwork and the careful drawing with paint that took place as I was establishing this image. So that is it for me. I'm glad you hung along for the ride, and I hope you got some good things out of this. Let me know if you have any questions or what parts you may have questions or even suggestions about. And thank you for watching. And we're coming up on the final image here. There we go, the final completed oil painting. The Farmer's Waterfall. Thank you very much for watching.